why I hate the Democratic Party. That is the subject of today's video. So, I used to be someone who believed the Democratic Party was the lesser of two evils. I do not feel that way nowadays, and a huge part of it is because of the fact that throughout my lifetime, I realized the Democratic Party and the Republican Party on a lot of the biggest political issues are so similar to each other that I view both parties as equally evil. And even if you can point out some minor things about, oh, well, this party does this party does that, there's still, the differences between them are so minuscule compared to what they have in common. People focus too much on their differences and not what they have in common. I don't understand why people focus so much on the differences to such a destructive extreme, because most people want a lot of the same things. Like, I would argue most people are actually way more traditional than I am. I'm a fucking radical. I'd like to see the end of government as we know it. I'd like to live in an anti-statist society where there is no government. That's a scary idea to a lot of people. And I feel like most Democrats and most Republicans, for the most part, they like the United States more than I do. I would argue. Obviously, some of the people who like ultra far left to an extreme that want to turn the United States into like a socialist country, or maybe even further left than that. Obviously, their outlook's a bit different, but they're not mainstream Democrats. They're a vocal minority on the internet. I do think socialism in general has risen in popularity partially due to the influence of people like Bernie Sanders, who I used to have a lot of respect for. I used to have a very high amount of respect for Bernie Sanders, but over time, I feel like Bernie really sold out. Bernie Sanders, he used to be a very anti-establishment person in a lot of his rhetoric. And while I'm not going to say he's like some mainstream Democrat nowadays, his attitude toward a lot of establishment Democrats is a lot softer and less harsh. By and large, the system has rewarded him for his obedience. And I don't respect that. I liked him when he was a more radical dude in terms of his willingness to piss off Democratic Party leadership. I mean, when was the last time he has done something that really angered, like, top-level Democrats? It's been fucking years. Like, once Joe Biden became the nominee, Bernie's kind of just not really been the threat to the establishment that people used to think he would be. Overall, Bernie Sanders is a coward. I just don't respect the man like I did when I was younger. One person I've always respected, though, who is a Democrat, is Dennis Kucinich. I supported his campaign back in 2008. He was one of my favorite members of Congress, and a huge part of why he lost his seat is that when they did redistricting in the 2010s, they only gave him about 40% of his district. That's all they gave him. So he lost the election because he had to compete against this Democrat who had been in government way longer than him. And Kucinich, to me, is like a prime example of a true anti-establishment Democrat, because in his last term in Congress, he suggested some of what Obama was doing in foreign policy were potential impeachable offenses because of how militaristic he was. And that's who RFK Jr. chose as campaign manager. While I'm not enthusiastic about RFK's campaign, I would much rather support RFK than anybody else currently running for president. What else can I say about why I hate the Democratic Party? Oh, the biggest one. I think one of the biggest reasons why I hate the Democratic Party is what happened in 2016 when Bernie Sanders ran for president. While I'm no longer a fan of Bernie Sanders, that was one of the most rigged primaries I have ever seen in my life. And a huge part of why we know the primary is rigged is because of information that came out from WikiLeaks. See, Dixie didn't like what happened. Bernie got cheated.